So I personally will never buy a pair of Nike SBs, and I want to explain why in this video, and I also want to explain why or how, in my opinion, Nike SB took over the skateboard shoe market. For the sake of today's video, I'm going to be setting up some new shoes, and I'm meeting up with Christian, who has a YouTube channel all about skate shoes. So I'm going to get his opinion. We're at Linda Vista Skate Park now, so let's go set these shoes up and dive into today's video. Jim Keedy, he's a professional athlete that declined the Nike SB check in 1998. Now to date, he is still the only person to make a public stand and go against Nike when they made this whole agreement with him or disagreement with him. Basically, he had to retire. All of his Wall Street buddies gave him an ultimatum. Basically, he had to either take the Nike check, the contract with the team, or he had to quit. So he decided to quit and make a public stand against Nike. Jim went to go on and work in Indonesia in 2007 at a Nike factory to see if he could survive off the $1.25 daily wage. It's a pretty cool study. You can check that video out. I'll leave a link down below, but we're meeting up with Andy Mack. He's at the park, and Christian. Let's break in these new shoes.
Hey beautiful people out there. Today's video is gonna be on
Nike SB, why it sucks.
Nike SB and why it sucks.
Jim Keedy, he went on for like 15 years to advocate for this. He even went to the Nike college, the Nike campus, whatever, to advocate for it. So obviously, eventually kind of like realized that there was no hushing him. Alright, so the next topic or thing that I wanted to get to with Nike SB, and I got Christian here.
Hi, what's up?
Welcome to the channel. The reason I wanted Christian is because a lot of his YouTube videos are about skate shoes, and like he goes really in depth about skate shoes, so I thought it'd be cool to have someone with a little bit of a different opinion, because I've never actually skated Nike SB shoes. I want to talk about the quality. What do you think about the quality of Nike SB shoes?
When I think about the quality of Nike SB shoes, I always think that they are like a lot better than other shoe companies that are like more core skate shoe companies. Because they have so much money, they can put a lot more money into like the materials that it's made of. But it's not always the case, because they can still make some shoes that like aren't put together in a way that will be like durable, so they'd still break down just as fast or whatever material it's out of. So the shoes that they make that like are like really good quality, like super high quality, like the first Nyjah, that thing was like super durable. Like I wore out the midsole, the outsole, way faster than anything else like on the shoe, and that took like a long time. I'm skating Vans right now. My feet hurt. My feet hurt so bad. I put 2 insoles in this.
So you'd say Nike SB is clearly a more quality shoe than Vans?
Than Vans, yeah, I think so. Vans outsole is always super thin. It's always a Volk. So like, yeah, it's always a trade-off. If it's a Volk, you have a good board feel or whatever, and it's a thin outsole so you can feel everything. But then like, if you have a Cup, it's usually a thicker outsole, so you can hit the ground a lot more, which pertains to me a lot more because I hit the ground a lot more than I land stuff. So like my feet are hitting the ground a lot more, so I need to be able to like keep skating.
That makes sense. And you also mentioned something we were talking about before we were just filming, is like how Nike SBs are a lot tighter. So if you have a fat foot, they might not be as good for you. Same with Converse, they're tighter. So I think that plays a factor too, is like the size of a foot or the type of foot you have.
And it also depends on how you skate too. But if where I'm flicking is different from where you're flicking, and where you flick is the same spot that there is stitches, then your shoe will get broken down quicker. That makes sense?
Makes complete sense. Back in high school, you would find someone that was goofy footed and you switch shoes with them if you were regular footed, because their other side of the shoe would get exploded. You ever do that?
No.
Yeah, that's what we did back in the, like you'd find someone that was goofy footed and then you could switch shoes because they would just rip out one side of their shoe. Yeah, a little life hack on how to save money on shoes.
Oh, he just doesn't know how to skate stairs, huh?
That's the situation.
The bolt is like, oh yeah, can you see that?
Oh yeah.
damn it, dude. Do I need new trucks? No, I need a new bolt, huh?
New bolt.
New bolt. But I need to do this because now I started trying it more than like 5 times, so I'm like, fuck. I just have to tighten it enough so it stays so I could do this.
Enough to roll away.
I just pushed on.
No way. No threads.
Yes.
First try, dude. Yeah.
I'm lying. You can show them the fault.
I mean, if it was Instagram, it'd be first try.
So in my opinion, it's pretty subjective what quality can be in a skate shoe. I think it has a lot to do with how it gets into your hands. It's not just the final product. Hence my opinion of not really wanting to buy Nike. Something that I've thought about, it's kind of similar to like in the 90s when cigarettes were really marketed and it was like cool, sexy, rad thing to do. And it didn't really matter that it was killing you. You just did it because it gave you the satisfaction. It's kind of the same thing. I know that's kind of a far-fetched, it's not black and white, but that's how I kind of think about some of these things, is like, just because something is really great in front of you doesn't mean that there's other repercussions that are happening behind the scene. Let's talk about the timeline of Nike. Their first attempt at skateboarding, they failed, and then their second attempt, they were really successful. So let's kind of break that down in a quick digestible way. Going way back to like Pal Peralta days, when people were buying Nike and Converse to skate in before they really tried to make it in the skate world, people were getting those shoes because they were actually cheaper than skate shoes, not because they were better quality. First time that Nike tried to enter the skateboard world, basically they got Bam Margera and a couple other people. Bam was like one of their front-facing people, and I think they were trying to like hit that crossbreed of skateboarder slash celebrity. However, their first line of shoes, the Chode, Shrimp, and Snack, I think that's what they're called, they completely tanked, they failed, they looked horrible, and they just weren't successful. And I think one of the reasons that they failed is because they tried to take their normal marketing approach out. It's the same way as they entered basketball or many other sports, and it just didn't work out. It's because the skate culture just said, no, we're not having that. But Sandy Schubecker came in and changed things in 2011. And I find that really important. It is crucial to the success of Nike, is because he took a whole different approach on how to dominate the skate world shoe market. Without Sandy, Nike definitely would not have been nearly as successful in skateboarding as they are now. What Sandy did is he introduced a strategy that would market to the core skateboarder. And what that looked like was basically limiting production and having no generic shoe releases. And one of the real things that helped was placing NikeSB in only core shops and not in their flagship shops, which really backfired later here now that we're in 2021. But we'll dive more into that later when we talk about the skate shops and NikeSB's kind of drama, if you will. I think Sandy's a really smart guy, don't get me wrong. He really didn't change anything with Nike at all. I think he changed the tongue just to like facilitate for the thicker tongues at the time, but that was really it. Nike ran the same way, they just approached the skateboarding market with a different strategy. Now ultimately at the end of the day, that strategy worked. NikeSB started getting momentum with the core skaters and building relationships with the core skate shops. So after Nike got their first taste of success in skateboarding, essentially started collabing with small core brands to make themselves, you know, look associated with the core brands and make themselves look like they actually care. Hence where they are now, doing collabs with really small skate brands. It makes it look legit. The next thing I want to get into is how NikeSB affects core skate shops or skate shops in general. What Nike does is basically forces skate shops to buy a minimum in order to get strike prices. Now in 2016, this led to the skate shop in Miami, MIA, to closing because of this situation. Recently in 2020, NikeSB released this whole big campaign with 58 reasons why to support your local skate shop, which is, again, just going back to their core messaging, even though they really don't care about skate shops at all. Now, before you click away thinking this guy has no idea what he's talking about, let me explain why I feel this way and why I think this way. Now, there is an article on Jankum with Ed Seligo, I think that's how you say his name, and he said, Nike was the biggest problem for us. We had many good years selling their product, but at the same time, they pushed tons of product on us that we didn't sell. They used skate shops like ours for years to establish the NikeSB brand. Then they opened up distribution to all the corporate stores, and they started selling direct to consumer. Being the #1 shoe brand wasn't enough for them. They had to exploit the brand to appease Wall Street. They did this with no plan in place for all the skate shops that struggled over the years. They loaded everyone up with a ton of debt, then dumped us. It's really irresponsible for such a large brand to do this and harm a very industry that they have come to be a part of. There's no better example of corporate greed. Now, really, if skate shops have limited amount of shoes that they're able to sell, how much money are they really making? Because they're profiting maybe $75 at the most on these shoes. They're limited releases, so how does that really affect the skate shop? Well, it's a lot of facilitating to certain sales for a specific customer. And you know, if Nike really wanted to help the skate shop, they would just make like a staple shoe that every skate shop can have that was always at the skate shop available for people to buy. Now, a really good example of Nike really not giving a fuck about any skate shop is what happened with 35 North in Seattle. Let me tell you about the details, because this is just sad. So Nike teamed up with Trans World Skateboarding, and basically they made this whole campaign around like skate DIY and something with like 58 skate shops. Basically they encouraged skate shops to go build a DIY skate spot, and they gave a bunch of different skate shops $500 in a Home Depot gift card, and they just told them to get creative and go build something. The contest went on, and 35 North in Seattle was selected as one of the winners. However, during this time when they were selected as a winner, put up on the website, a concerned citizen contacted the Parks and Rec department in Seattle and asked for police to come down and investigate the situation that was going on. New York Times did a whole article on this. I'll leave a link down below to all the things that I'm talking about in this video so you can check them out for yourself. But basically, as a result to the investigation, NikeSB stripped the crew of their win and pulled down the video. In a statement to Seattle Times, Nike wrote that they do not condone the creation of skate spots where they are not permitted by law. Basically, Nike backed out of everything. They didn't want to have to deal with the legal repercussions of said contest that they presented to skate shops to look cool for the core skate shops. So on top of the disqualification from NikeSB, Seattle Times wrote that the city's announcement will seek a damages in the low six figures. So not only is Nike taking skate shops out by their whole inventory and weird campaign process, but they're also taking skate shops out by telling them to go build skate shops and then not helping them with the repercussions. Next thing I wanted to dive into is how NikeSB affects skateboarders and the culture of skateboarding. Now, before we dive into all of that, let's quickly remember the Jim Keddy story where he basically denied the big Nike capitalism check approach, where seriously, I don't think there's been any skateboarder that hasn't. I think we can use Tony Hawk as a great example. He hasn't taken the Nike check, where he's definitely willing to take big corporate money and turn it into rad things like what he does with the skate park project, which is basically funding areas for skate parks in underprivileged zones. That's super dope. And yeah, Tony Hawk hasn't taken the big check. Of course, you're gonna have someone like Nyjah, P-Rod, even BA taking the big Nike check. And I'm not here to like question their ethics or morals, but just to add in some perspective. Right now in April of 2021, Janowski is worth 20 million. So 20 million to the most successful skater, NikeSB, while 200 million is going to someone for just wearing Nike. Now, I know that is a little bit of an irrational comparison, maybe because one sport is bigger than the other sport, but it is good to sometimes just have some perspective of how easy it is to flaunt some check to skateboarders, and they just take it thinking that they've won this big grandiose move. Now, if I can illustrate this a little bit more, essentially what I'm trying to say is that skateboarders think they're taking this big Nike check when in all reality that is breadcrumbs for Nike. And now why that's important to establish and to say in this video is because that's the standard that skaters have accepted. Now skaters have accepted that check, so that makes Nike think, okay, that's where we're gonna put them in. That's where we're gonna categorize them. Now you might be thinking, well shit, like if you have all these morals and stuff like that, maybe you shouldn't have an iPhone or clothes or anything like that. And to that statement, I would just say the difference is that, you know, a lot of the stuff that I buy is based off of demand, and it's not so much this manipulated way of making me believe that I need something. And that's what I think Nike has really done. And I'll give a couple of examples of what I mean. For example, is the LA courthouse situation that NikeSB made a whole campaign about. So in 2013, the city of Los Angeles didn't have it in their budget to facilitate the West LA courthouse. So essentially they couldn't manage it anymore. So what Nike decided to do is take advantage of this great opportunity to make it look like they did this grandiose move by giving skateboarders a skateboard spot. So basically in 2014, Nike made a whole campaign making it look like they basically bought this spot for skaters and made it skatable. Took all the skate stoppers off. There was Jankum there, surprisingly. All these different brands and skateboarders to endorse Nike's grandiose move yet again letting skaters believe that they are here for them, they're going to take care of them, they're going to give them skate spots is essentially what they were trying to do. And it worked. It made people think of like, oh wow, if they're giving skaters skate spots, how can I be mad at them? How could I not like them? Well, again, it's smoke and mirrors, I'm sorry to tell you. Now, Dead Hippie on Instagram recently made a post about the courthouse's current situation, and basically where it current stands is that Nike is no longer associated with it. It's back up into its situation where it's a toss. The city doesn't really know what it's going to happen. It could get torn out really shortly. Basically, it's up for a company. Any big company wants to go out there and buy it and actually buy it can now do that. So again, that's just a prime example of how Nike has manipulated skateboarders into thinking that they actually care. Now, I did dig a little bit more into this particular situation. It seems like the judge, Jerry Brown, basically filed some sort of motion, and now they're in this like in-between pending stage. But Nike has said nothing at all. They haven't spoken on it because guess what? They landed the wiki page. That's all that matters. You Google it and they're there and people believe it. So it's like time to move on. They don't need to keep investing in that anymore. So surely by now you probably understand why I will never buy Nike SB. But with that said, I don't judge anybody that wears Nikes or decides to go buy Nikes or is sponsored by Nike. That's not my problem that they are wearing those shoes, and I don't think they're part of the problem, maybe a little bit, but honestly, I think Nike as a whole is the biggest problem. Whether or not you want to go buy them is up to you. This is just my opinion on why I don't buy them. Now, I could make a really long list of why, but hopefully some of this was digestible for you in a way that you can understand why I wouldn't ever buy Nike. I'm not one of those don't do it campaign, consolidated skateboards kind of people. I think there should be corporations within skateboarding. I think there's a lot of opportunity for Nike to be within skateboarding, but the way that they've done it so far since the beginning of Nike, it's never gonna change. So I just never gonna fuck with Nike ever. I mean, child labor, wage exploitation, forced labor, sexual harassment by Nike executives, the disgusting hypebeast culture, amplifying everything. I mean, it's all pretty bad. And don't get me wrong, we all working and living in this capitalistic approach, but I think integrity and ethics should still matter in a product. Hope this wasn't too much ranting for you guys. Hope you enjoyed this perspective of why I will never buy Nike. Make sure you smash that subscribe button if you're not already, and we'll see you in the next one. MASH.